Turkey, I had a pretty tough experience. Right, somebody shot my car with 4 bullets in the car.
Mallik, first of all, thank you for your time. Pleasure to be here. I'll try my best to do your title and your experience justice. But for those who don't know who you are, I'll just give a quick intro and then, of course, you can add anything that I've missed. Mallik Rao, CTO of O2 Telefonica here in Germany, soon to be the COO as well. That's the dual role that you've been given now. But what I really want to understand before you also introduce yourself is I don't quite think that people grasp exactly how important the role of a CTO of such a large organization is, purely because, including myself, because CTO can be anything related to technology, but when the tech that you work on drives millions of users' daily lives, one snag, one technical fault can impact millions, right? So, what does your role involve, and how important is the role of a CTO in such a large organization?
Yeah, okay. Look, pleasure to talk to you. I think the technology roles have been evolving, right? A lot of times you see, in terms of when you're delivering a technology to customers, and telecommunication is a service which is delivered at scale, right? In Germany, we do close to 45 million customers, right? It means every customer, when you get up in the morning, when you switch on your phone, right, it has to work. It's like light, water, right? When you switch on the light, you don't expect that goes. So that's the kind of assurance which you provide, and that becomes a critical, because this is called critical infrastructure.
Right.
When you run critical infrastructure at scale, the technology plays a significant role, right? And when you deliver a service, and that service is critical for customers. And today, when Corona gave a classic example, or classic time when aeroplanes were not flying, trains were not running, you couldn't go on the road. The only thing was digital infrastructure. So it is extremely critical. Again, the roles have evolved in terms of being technical to technological. Because when you are technical person, you of course manage the systems, manage everything together. But role of a technologist evolve. How do you take the technical aspects of it and bring to the customer at scale through people? So when you run these kind of infrastructures at scale, it's about how do you build the resilience, technical resilience, but more than that, how do you get people rally around the cause that, okay, you're running something bigger than a technical stuff. So that's how I see, that's how the roles have been evolving. And any technologist role is, if you can combine with people, if you can combine with cultures, then you find a purpose, and you find a meaning for what you are delivering to the society. That's how we see it.
Right. But what drew you to technology engineering? Because back when you would have done your education, AI, of course, didn't exist. The scale of tech we have today didn't exist. Did you already know, saying that I want to do something in tech and engineering, or what drew you to the career path that you've taken?
Look, in every careers, you have a lot of options. You will never have a fixed path. At least I never thought that I want to have a fixed path. What is the passion, right? For me, the passion is technology, right? I'm not necessarily a very technical. I did, of course, technical with R&D when I started off, right? I was working in the R&D function, but as you work through, then you find your passion. For me, technology definitely is a passion, and working with people is a passion. And when you combine at scale, then you have endless possibilities. I even tried myself to be marketeer. So I moved into account management. I moved into sales, right? I've done roles in sales. I mean, I was running 150 million euro kind of account myself, right? And then over a period of time, you realize, where do you want to leverage? I normally say, how do I leverage Mallik? Right? And that is what I found maybe last 15, 20 years, to say my core, my backbone is technology.
Yeah.
Right. My backbone is understanding technology, relating technology. How do you help solving a problem?
Exactly.
And I always have been passionate about scale.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not a person who would like to work in a smaller kind of domain.
Yeah.
So I'm built for scale. That's what you find out over a period of time. You can't have an end goal that, okay, this is what I want to be.
Yeah.
Right. It's about enjoying the careers and enjoying with people. Right. Building careers for others. Right. As you grow in careers, I think the most important, what I realize today is, it's not about my growth. It's about how do I get my team, how do I get my team to have fun at workplace, right? How do I bring the values for them to be successful, right? How can I help? And that's where you transition from being a individual contributor to a manager, to a leader, and then to a mentor.
Yeah.
So that is how the transition happens.
I
But you
think
can't
this,
have a very fixed path to go there.
yeah, I think this is a very important message, because people like myself often think that if you don't get into what you want to do at an early stage in life, let's say that I want to become a CTO, if I don't do something related to tech throughout my career, I will never become a CTO, because that's often the perception that people have. But like you said, you were managing an account and now you're the CTO, right? So I don't think it's quite as complex as people say, that do tech your entire life and eventually it'll lead you to a tech role, but rather experiment, see what you like, find your passion, and then get into something that you genuinely
Absolutely,
love doing.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you don't need to be a tech to be, or a technical guy to be a technologist.
Yeah.
Right. You can be a technologist without knowing technical stuff. Right. It's possible.
I wish more people knew this. And this is something
it is absolutely, because it's changing so much.
Yeah.
Technology changes so much.
Yeah.
I mean, with AI, it's accelerated change.
Yeah.
Right. Multiplied by 100 times. Every change, every quarter, you start seeing it. I mean, just about a month back, I was building myself the OpenClaw agents for my personal use.
Yeah.
And suddenly I see, wow, in a 3 months time, how it has transitioned from a kind of small projects to become a kind of wave in just 6 months time. So things are changing so fast. You can't be expert. You cannot learn everything. You cannot be saying, okay, I'm a technical guy, then only I can be successful, or I'm a marketeer, I can be successful.
Yeah.
I think as you grow up in the career, the most important thing is enjoy working with people, number one. Enjoy connecting the dots. Dots are important.
Yeah.
That is, domain knowledge is significantly important. I do not underestimate the fundamental engineering. When living in Germany, fundamental engineering is a core to the country.
Yeah.
It is important, but fundamental engineering doesn't, not necessarily that's the only thing where people can be successful. That's how I see it. Again, success depends on individuals. Yeah. Some people say, okay, look, I'm fine to be an individual contributor throughout my life. Yeah. It's also fine. There's nothing in the age of AI, in the age of when the opportunities available in the world is significantly large. Yeah. The painting has become super big. Yeah. It is no more a passport size picture. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, but we'll come to AI. But before that, I want to understand, you said you've lived in 8 countries before our conversation. I know that you were in Turkey for a while. And before that, you were probably based in India and all over the world. But how has that shaped the person that you are and the role that you do today? Because people often underestimate the value of going abroad, being exposed to different cultures, different work environments. And I've seen that personally, because I've traveled a fair amount. Yeah. And it opens your eyes to a whole new world. Yeah. Right. So how has that influenced your journey and the person that you are today?
For us, I think there are a few things which, if I look back last 20 years, when 8 countries, right? When I used to go to any country as an individual, right, before my marriage, was a completely different scale. Yeah. Then you have a family, and my I mean, as an Indian, to be honest, there are certain things which drives you. Yeah. For example, it drove me about when I was working with Ericsson. It drove me that when I want to go out with the family, I don't want to be going as a manager. I want to go as a leader. Yeah. Right, and those are the things which drives you. So when we came out, I think the biggest decision, or when I came out in 2012, 2012, 2011, along with my both boys and my wife, 4 of us. We were talking in Delhi airport. We were saying when you're getting out into any country, it's important to leave the baggage where it belongs to. Right? We were saying the shoulder bags and said, throw it and say, okay, I'm getting out with a very fresh view. And that is what helped us in transitioning to 8 different countries, cultures, people, right? Every country, every culture has a very, very different way of looking at things, right? I remember going to Netherlands and I had a culture coach, to be honest. I think you need also, when you move out as a family, do not underestimate the impact of change, not only for you, but for the family.
Right.
For my boys, they were 9 and 11, right? When you take them into a school, the guys have no clue. They have not seen anything. But today, I can leave them in anywhere in the planet. They're 26 and 21. Leave them anywhere in the planet, they'll make friends. So life teaches a lot in that sense. I mean, So those changes which are significantly important in terms of absorbing the culture, appreciating the culture, you got to change. Even in India, to be honest, I think I worked in 14 places in India itself. So I come from I come from Hyderabad and Bangalore area, Chennai, Siliguri, Patna, Kolkata, Jaipur, Mumbai, Delhi. When you work in this country, in these places, every place is different. A Bihari culture is different than a Northeast culture, right? From a South Indian culture. So I think we have a great opportunity in India to have such a massive cultural diversity, which we underestimate. The second thing is, I really love back in the days where we were staying, we are the possibly only country which has the religious diversity at scale. There is no country in the world who can claim that, okay, you have such a large religious diversity. So we come from diverse cultures, and that's a leverage which we can do, right? If you take Europe primarily, of course, a lot of cultures, but from a religion perspective, it's more or less, it's a monolith. But we come from that place, so we should be the one who can really go around in the world and say, okay, we can absorb any culture. So that is the spirit which we came in the last 15 years we've been out.
But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, in India, when you look at the corporate environment and the way people work, let's say that I have a meeting with the CTO, right? I tend to be intimidated, saying that, oh, the CTO wants to meet me. What's going on? Is there something going on? Why is the CTO want to meet someone junior like me? But here in Europe, at least the work culture I've been exposed to is, okay, I'm meeting Mallik. He's the CTO of the company, but he's still a human being at the end of the day. So do you still see that this, that corporate hierarchy in India still needs to, maybe change a bit compared to what Europe is? Because religion, absolutely, but what about the corporate?
I think corporates are changing. I mean, like, for example, I worked almost like 15 years in India itself before I came out. Honestly, I personally, that is a personal, very personal to me, since being an engineer to a team leader, manager, I never had fortunately, I've been lucky to have all my managers who have been much more, open, much more transparent. I think the biggest thing is we have to start having respect to people. Right? I think that is what is important, and I see a lot of change. Honestly, I mean, I'm extremely closely connected. I still hold an Indian passport despite going all the places. I think there is a change which is happening. The change also is happening even from the youth, right? The people who are coming out of the college need to get that self-confidence, because of course, you're economically, socially, there are so many challenges which we grow up with, and that carries away into the professional work. I normally feel that first 1 or 2 years you could have all the dogma, but once the dogma, you have to get out. You have to throw your luggage of dogma and say, okay, I'm throwing it out. I am transitioning. You have to decide. I mean, I normally tell my team also, whenever I work, I tell them, guys, tell me when is the time. You choose a time and date to say, I am changing. Like, I change the organizations. Even in Germany, I've done 6 major organizational changes. normally people say Germany is it's difficult to change, but here I've done that. But tell the people that, guys, okay, take your time. You need to have time and space. Once you have a time and space, give the freedom to the people. And that's what managers need to do everywhere, not only here, even in India. I see similarities also in Germany. It's not that everybody is same. It's also you have a traditional industries have a similar kind of hierarchy, right? But new age industries, digital, right? I think it's changing a lot. But it also needs on both sides, right? It takes two for tango. Huh? When you need the guys who was coming up as an employee. In India also, the biggest thing what I learned from our country is the manager or the employee feels that the responsibility lies with the manager to tell you what you need to do. But it has to change. You have to be, you are adult. I mean, when you come into the job at 20, 21, 22, maybe at 25 or at least 25, 26, you will become an adult. You got to take responsibility. If you don't take responsibility, if you offload the responsibility to your manager, to your company, you can't be. To take the destiny on your own hand, right? And take out the dogma. I think this is what I see it, and that's what is needed for people.
Yeah. And coming to your role as a CTO, was there an incident maybe in the past or when you were starting your career that actually deeply inspired you and motivated you, saying that the system is broken, I want to fix it, I want to do this, this is the change, like you were saying, be proactive, take a decision. Was it something that led you to saying that I want to fix this? This is
maybe I can give you an example. I was working with Hexacom, right, in Jaipur. So I was living in Jaipur and I was working there, and one fine day I had to do upgrade of the system. When I was working with Ericsson at that point of time, right, there was, of course, OSS was the operator, right, and then I was working in the system. So I was an engineer. I was fixing it. I was support engineer. And the systems are like, you have a terminal on the 4th floor, but the system, the container or the hardware is on the ground floor. So I go there. I'm supposed to upgrade the system. I'm supposed to shut down one of the systems. There's a two dual processor kind of system. One processor I need to shut down. One processor will be working, right? So I went up. I blocked one processor, and I was supposed to take out physically the card in the processor which I blocked, right? And then I replaced the card. So I went down. I don't know what happened in my mind. I pulled out from the main system, which is supposed to be working. And afternoon it was about 11:30, 12 o'clock, and the whole network came down because I killed the live system. And then everything was shut down. I said, check, what happened? Let me go up. I went up and I started working on it, and they were shouting. There were so many people because the entire network is down. I remember I'm walking into a network operations center. It has a glass doors, and I go in. The CEO, the CTO, and all the managers of the customer comes and jumping onto me. And I told them one thing, guys, if you want me to recover this, I screwed it up. I said like this, I screwed it up. I did a mistake. If you want me to fix it, if you sit like this, I cannot do. And I remember the CTO was Ratan Singh, right, from Army. The guy said, Colonel Jaggi. Colonel Jaggi said, Mallik, agree, guys, let's get out. And he took the team out. He shut the door and he let me for 15 minutes. In 15 minutes, I was able to recover the system. And then I went and thanked him. And that discipline of a guy, right, Colonel Jaggi standing up and saying, look, I mean, for me to stand up and say, I did a mistake, I'm owning my problem. Right. But if you want me to solve the problem, I need a space. Right? I need a space. If I don't have a space, I get screwed. I'm congested. I can't even breathe because the pressure is very high. So those are the times which defines you as a human being, as a person. And that grew me a significant confidence, and I have fantastic time with them, with the customer. So those kind of events which are there. In Turkey, I had a pretty tough experience. Right? Somebody shot my car with 4 bullets in the car. Right? When you see these kind of events, that changes you, and that builds your personality, that builds a core. That is what is, and everybody gets this opportunity. It's not that something bad has to happen. There are even good things can happen. There's something which is challenging, but there are some successes which will be like, when I got my first job as a CTO, I was 37. I had nobody idea about being a CTO at 37, right? Running a 1,600 people organization. But everybody gets the opportunity. You just have to grab it. Yeah.
And I think this has probably also influenced you to be the leader you are today, right? Those experiences, like
Absolutely.
you said, with your seniors, then
Absolutely.
So those shape you in.
Absolutely. You see, once you get a core confidence, what are you? Right? I love reading spiritual books or this one, but if you really know what is your core? Everybody, every human being will have its core. If you can find your core, you can have a bliss. That's how I see it. Yeah.
And now again, coming back to your role, as a outsider, I just want my mobile. I want my network connection. I want, when I wake up and decide to call someone, I want my connection to work. But as an insider working in an organization that powers telecommunication, for example, what are the decisions that you would make internally that people don't see on a surface level, but you see it because you make it, that has an impact on thousands and millions of people, but we as such just don't see it because we're not plugged into the ecosystem like you are? What
Absolutely. I think on two levels of it. One is customer. You have, I think it's a job of a company to seal the complexities, but it's like this. We have something called technology agnostic experience to the customer. Customers shouldn't care about technology. They should be using technology, but inside it's technology aware. Everybody needs to be aware what is the machine room look like. Yeah, or that's where all the action happens. I think few things. Number one, are you able to build a strong team which can replace you tomorrow? That gives you freedom to think. And if I look back in last couple of years, the biggest change which we had to make is geopolitics. When I make decisions, if I look at my job as a CTO or a CTIO, IT, network, digital services, all the three, if I look at it, we spend close to 1.2 billion euros every year.
Yeah.
And to run the mission, it's about 850 million euros is needed. So it means when you're working in such a large system, you have to make decisions. But decisions, if it is democratized, if it's not consolidated at one place, if it is democratized to a team where you build a competence, then it becomes easy. For me, today I run, of course, technology. I'm also the CEO for the enterprise business. Right? That takes me to the customers. When I go to the customer and tell them, okay, this is what I'm bringing in, and that's a transition people see also from when a technologist or a branded technologist, Mallik, comes to a table for the customer is aware, okay, if Mallik is promising or if Telefonica is promising, they will deliver. Yeah, so that's the change you make from technology plus business, right? So that's the role I'm doing last 18 months, doing technology plus the business, right? And now from 1st of May, I take over another role. It's completely different. Everything is a new learning. I mean, when I'm running the enterprise business, when I look back and say, Mallik as a CTO, how much has added value this CTO is giving to me as a CEO of the business? So I look at a lot of times myself and say, how the hell this guy has made this decision? Because you have a technology lens. So when you change the lenses into different roles, what you make, you learn a lot. Yeah. So machine room is important, and I normally say people call it as it should work, right? When I make a call, it should work. But a lot of times people say, okay, I don't want antenna nearby. Right? When you don't have antenna, you don't have a signal. So those are the things which you need to be careful in terms of designing, planning, executing, right? And then operating, and then decommissioning. Because if you don't decommission the legacy, you can't keep on adding. I normally have, in my employee event, I have close to 2,500 people team. How do you tell them what is important? I had a t-shirt say less is more. So as a leader, you need to have that kind of impact. But at the same time, when there is a problem, you got to have ability to go down and then look at the what's happening.
Yeah. And I think when you said democratize, that to me stood out, because you may make a decision, but you also want your team to be on board with that decision.
Absolutely.
So let's say somebody junior like me
Yeah.
has saying that, okay, maybe this is not the right thing to do. You give them a year. You say that, okay, why do you think it's not the right thing to do? So I think it's also important that you consult, but at the end of the day, you take responsibility for.
I think it's also a leadership trait. To be honest, a leadership trait. How do you empower people? Because if you're not investing skills at scale, as I said, I have 2,500 people in my team. How do you invest time and effort to really upskill them? Because your technology is changing so fast, you expect everybody to be the masters of everything. It's unless you overinvest. I normally say overinvest on culture, overinvest on people, and overinvest on competence. If you don't do these things, you can't scale up the organization. Then you become a bottleneck. Everybody comes to you to say, okay, you make a decision. So that is where empowering the team goes hand in hand with reskilling the team. I think these are the two things which are needed. And that is when a lot of times I do display myself to say, guys, if something is going successful, it's you. If something is screwed up, Mallik, I cover it. And that's my job as a manager to say, okay, if something is wrong, I will cover up with the team. And this has been not now, even in India, everywhere where I worked, I said, if success is to you, if something challenging situation comes, is me. I will manage. That's my bloody job to manage. So that's why I see it.
Have you learned to deal with this pressure? That you go to sleep, you wake up, and the next morning things are down. Is that something you've learned?
I think look, why would you say I'm going to sleep and there will be something going down? If you have that in your mind that something will go down, then you have not done your job. You should be able to have, I mean, that's when you're working in the environment, you should have that ability to invest or over invest on these kind of things. When you go to sleep, you don't really say, I go to sleep with a worry that, okay, something could go wrong. I mean, if shit has to happen, it will happen. I mean, it's technology. Technology is life because it is at scale. And I remember when I was in Netherlands, I came, my first job in Vodafone. On my 4th day, I just come into the company, new place. On a 4th day, the entire data center got fire. So 20% of the entire network was down for 5 days, right? And that is how you learn, and that's where you learn from people. I remember the leadership at Vodafone, the guys called me, and I was thinking, okay, I have a predecessor who is already there in the system still, he's not gone out, maybe he could manage, they will ask him to manage. Right. But as a company, they said, no, you are the guy you're the CTIO. You make a decision, what you want to do. And that puts an enormous, that defines the value system of companies. And that value systems come from people, and people are company. And that's what is important for me when I'm working in my organization. I say, what is the values I'm bringing in? Because technology is pervasive. You go to ChatGPT today, at last 3-4 months, I'm sure you ask question about technology, it will give you more than my ability to even convey. So technology is pervasive. But how do you connect the dots, and how do you encourage people to take risks? Those are things which are needed for us to be as a leader.
Yeah. But then now you talk about investing, over investing, you talk about having systems, foolproof, fail-proof mechanisms and things like that, right? Let's say you spoke about AI. Now you have 5G here as well, right? How do you see AI integrating into the existing environment that you have? Because telecommunications has been there for decades now, right? So, like you said, it's probably legacy in a certain sense of the way. But now you have to implement AI into it, right? So, is that something you see as a direct fit? Is there a lot of customization that needs to be done? How is AI, working with technology?
I mean, in fact, if you take any industry, whether it's automobile, right, whether it is manufacturing, right, hyperscalers, tech industry. Telecom has been consistently adopting. You have a 2G, right? Only voice. 3G comes in, introduction of data. 4G comes in, right? A large amount of spectrum you use it. Then you have 5G, 5G standalone. This is one industry which has ability to absorb any technology which is coming in at scale. Again, I'm talking about as an industry. I mean, take India. I mean, when you say 4G introduction in the country, right? In 2 years' time, you have 700,000 locations fired up. When that's the industry, this industry has a pace. This industry has ability to absorb. I think for us, disruption is something which we got to be learning more. I mean, take example of hyperscalers, right? Anybody who is, if you take any big company, they are there for maybe 10 years, 15 years, 20 years.
Right. Yeah.
Telefonica with the same name, we are 100 years old company. Right? So these are the industries which are there. AI is extremely, I think this is one of the transformational tool. However, bringing AI into any place, if I have to take any industry, when I say a non-tech kind of industry, the hyperscalers, Amazon, Google, if you take these ones who are producing the technology, if you want to apply, telecom is an area which everybody wants to get in. Because I mean, we are absorbing so much technology, and we are absorbing whatever we introduce. You can see it next second, next microsecond impact to the customer. Right? It's a real time. So AI for me, I think we've been piloting or we've been adopting AI at scale in some domains. Right? For me, AI is definitely two cases. One is, as a leader, are you able to create a compelling event? If you don't create a compelling event, it's difficult for technology to be absorbed. It takes its own time. For example, for me, the compelling event was Ukraine war. When Ukraine war happened, our energy prices, we spent close to 190 million euros every year for energy in this company. 190 million euros. Suddenly, when this happened, immediately my energy exposure was 300 million user. So 300 million exposure on a 200 or 190 million cost. So we got to do something different. And that's when the team really sees, wow, okay, this is the time for us to be experimenting it. And then we said, let's take this use case and optimize energy. So that is where AI helps you. That's where the machine learning helps you, right? That's where, do I have agentic AI in next coming year or 6 months for me to leave an agent to be managing only energy in my domain? I feel confident that maybe in 12 months time, I should be able to. So we are able to absorb. And this is where, I mean, for me as a leader, it's extremely important for us to create a compelling event, whether it's negative because of external circumstances or something positive, for people to say, okay, have fun this with the agent. I mean, when I demonstrated myself, my OpenClaw agent, my team was saying, Mallik, what are you doing? I said, guys, I mean, now onwards, this OpenClaw or my agent can do a better job than me, right? I mean, I think it's also adopting those changes personally at a leadership level that demonstrates that you have ability to take it to a larger scale.
But because when I think of AI in telecommunications, the first thing that my mind goes to is if there's a network outage, if there are customer service requirements, you have an agent that automates the handling of all of these tickets, etc. But what are some other sort of pilots that you feel, or where you feel AI will be of even more use than just like
a regular, take our networks, autonomous networks. When today we have close to 345 million parameters every day we deliver on a 40 million on 29,000 base station network, right? When you're doing it, because every mobility is a transaction, right? Every mobility you can even consider as a token. Assume that every customer, every interaction, if I tokenize that, it becomes massive amount of tokens what you generate, right? On one side, for us, few areas. One is autonomous networks. It is not about again, I do not want to say we will plan an agent or we will plan for a failure. You would plan with AI, with specifically with AI. How do you not have this outage? That is possible, because earlier whatever we design, we say we design with a grade of service. This is what will happen. I design when I cannot say zero failures, but the ambition is that I want to design a network which doesn't fail, and that is the difference between a redundancy and a resiliency. Right? So redundancy is basically you build two systems, one goes down, or three systems, one goes down, this one. Resiliency is any system which fails, somebody else will take it. For example, my base station network, right? 10 base stations down, another 10 will be providing coverage in that area. Right? So it's important for us to really take those learnings, what happened in the access, into the core side of the network. And that's where we say, okay, we will go to public cloud, we'll adopt the technology at scale with public cloud, because cloud as a technology, not necessarily it sits on somebody else, but as a technology, you adopt Kubernetes. So as you're adopting these technologies, then you can make it much more pervasive.
Yeah. And I think what really stood out to me in that answer was we want to do it at scale, and we want to do it fast throughout the organization, because like you said, AI is something, every day there's something new. Like you built your own agent the other day, right?
Absolutely.
So I think it's also important to realize that if you do it fast. If you fail fast. And if you're going to, implement it at scale, because there's no point doing, one
Absolutely.
or two.
Tinkering will not help.
Yeah.
Tinkering, in telecommunications, tinkering will not help. It has to be at scale, because we are a scale business.
Yeah.
Right? And also the service differentiation. When you go to a specific customer, if you're able to have a service differentiation and service assurance, that's what stands out to the customer. Because every customer who is coming to us, whether it's consumer or enterprises or home, imagine if you have a high stake football or IPL running, and then your connection goes down. You don't want to imagine those things. Yeah. So that's how you prepare by default in terms of resilient infrastructure, and that's how these industries are there for decades.
Yeah.
Right?
But does it also help that because the barriers are so high to entry in telecommunications, like if I tomorrow decide I want my own network provider, like I want to set up my own organization, I need $1 billion minimum.
Yeah.
But does it also help that, because the barriers are so high and because the competition is limited to 4 or maybe 5 major players, that even if there isn't so much of a service differentiator, you will still have a market share in, you would still have customers coming to you?
I think, look, why do customers comes to us? Customer comes to us because there is a trust. That when I'm giving my information to a service provider, and this is again one industry where trust is not compromised. Like for me, when I'm looking at AI and all these things, I would never put an AI on a customer data. I would be extremely careful, because customer data is sacrosanct for this industry. Customer privacy, security, resilience, because you're delivering service for the lives of people, right? So those are something which are kind of golden rules where you cannot say I will break it, right? The rest of it, in terms of technology, in terms of piloting technologies, that's where the speed has to be much faster, because you don't want to try out any technology on a customer data. I mean, of course, the internet companies could have a different heartbeat, but telecommunication, I think that is sacrosanct for us. Yeah.
Is 6G coming? Because what I've been reading is that 2030 is what they've planned to roll out. You have companies like Qualcomm, Samsung who are already in active research. Is that something that Telefonica is doing?
Absolutely. We will say 6G, we will start pilots, and we will start, we've already, of course, part of the global standard organizations, right? We're already defining what should it look like. What is it going to be different in 6G versus a 5G, right? In let's say, one simple example I can give you, in 5G, we are delivering something to the customer, right? Consumer. In 6G, the networks will become sensors, right? Sensors means it has an ability of two-way. I can sense, I can perceive. It's simple. I mean, even in philosophy, people say when you sense, you can perceive, right? That is what is 6G coming in with. That's the value proposition. It becomes a sensor network. If I have a base station here, Today, if I'm human or if I'm a machine, if I'm radiating, if you have a computer, if you have a phone, but it identifies. But it doesn't identify a passive component. It doesn't identify my sofa, it doesn't identify my table, right? But if the 6G, today, if you go to a shop, people will know what your thermal imaging, how many people are moving in which direction, and how much of furniture I have. Because if you have a video, you can see exactly, you're seeing it. You have a table, you have a sofa, and that's what 6G will start doing it. Or it senses. It becomes a sense. I have a plant here, right? I have a white background, blue background, and that's the direction which we will go with 6G. So it becomes completely different perspective in terms of sensing. For telecommunication industry, one big challenge is we are always hooked to backward compatibility. Oh, I should support 2G, I should support 3G, 4G because I have users. But we also need to learn how do you transition, how do you switch off the technologies and move forward. Otherwise, you can't expect 6G to be working with 4G. You can't expect 4G to be working with 2G. But today, if you have a 2G phone, even today you can use it. We don't force the consumers to say, move on, the device has to move. And those are things happening. For example, we switched off 3G 2 years ahead of plans. And I want to go completely by 2028 to say I would run only 5G standalone network. I would not run a 4G, I would not have a 3G, I would not have a 2G, right? Because if you want to prepare for future, you got to see how quickly you can get rid of backlog. It's like dropping down the bag and say, I'm done with this, I need to move. Otherwise, we are stuck in both worlds.
That's like the Apple model, right? If you have an old iPad, it doesn't support. Absolutely. It says, sorry, get a new iPad or get a.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the pull versus push. I mean, Apple, of course, every customer is pulling. Right? That's a pull technology. And that's what they created with the experience. And telecom is a kind of, okay, I'm changing to 4G to 5G. Oh, please change the handset. But you got to create the compelling event for people to change it.
And if I were to be a skeptic of what you just spoke about 6G, where you said sensing, it'll know what you're doing, where you're doing, etc. Is it not invasive to a user's privacy, for example? Like, let's say I don't want 6G knowing personal things about myself, or things that are going on in my house. How's that? Is that
absolutely? I think that is where the choice of individuals has to happen, right? That's why we have privacy regulations, right? You can subscribe what you want to. You don't want, you don't subscribe. I mean, we're not like internet companies. If you want to download a software, you have to give access to camera. You have to do the data. Everything has to happen. Otherwise, I can't give you service. But here you have option, and that's why telecom, as you said initially, there's a barrier. It's not really a barrier. It's a licensed. We get a license. We pay enormous amount of money with a responsibility that for the society. If you're feeling that you are playing in an area which is responsible for society, it's not responsibility only for people. It's not responsibility for things, but everything. I mean, if you look at it, for example, take a drone. Drone, at least in Germany, you can't fly a drone and take pictures of all the areas. There are a lot of restrictions because if a drone can come in, for example, Google, when you're driving Google Maps or Google Earth, when you're driving, it's a camera which is capturing everything, and that's where you say, okay, this is what I have to mask, so that regulations will be there. So that will become responsible companies, and that's why nobody can come and say, okay, I'm putting my wireless network on my own, because it's a significant mandate we get, and a significant compliance responsibility we get when we are managing these users at scale.
And finally, I want to touch upon startups, and because a lot of people my age, maybe even a little younger, are now into creating something of their own. They want to be their own boss. They want to do something of their own. First of all, if you, let's say, were 25, 26, and you had to do something today in the field of AI or in the field of tech, what would that one particular area be which you would focus on that you see exploding in the future?
I think for me, whether it's AI or without AI, AI gives a faster, the opportunity is much faster, right? Much faster. but what problem are you trying to solve? I mean, I have in 30th floor, I have a lab called Vira. So we have an incubation center where we bring in small startups, because for a corporate, a big companies, the biggest challenge is systems, biggest challenge is processes. I mean, I normally joke with my team, guys, we can kill any startup in technology, because by the time the guy comes in, then he has to meet 4 different engineers, then you ask privacy, security, and people will die. So companies dies. So that's where we are trying to create a place where companies can come, right, and do some pilots. I think most of the big organizations have that programs where you say, if you are able, but when you're building a startup, for me, I think it's extremely clear. Even if I want to do myself, when I do with, at least in India, I'm getting involved with one of the startup. Essentially, what problem are you solving? Just a problem, and that problem, is it relevant for the person you're speaking with, right? So I think that's the only way. That's the only way.
Because I
think,
also think a lot of people, like you said, have concerns that, okay, if I build my startup, what is stopping Telefonica from killing my startup, right? That's another thing. Which,
but why would Telefonica or any company want to kill? Because it's not a. I think startup is never competition for a larger company, right? Till it scales up, right? Once it scales up, maybe people say, "Wow, this is a scary thing." Right? I mean, that's how you have big companies, hyperscalers or Cisco's of the world earlier, or maybe today, it's different big ones, which will absorb the companies.
Yeah.
But I don't think startup is a competition to any industry. Till startup becomes scale up, that's when people start noticing, oh, okay, this is a problem now, because it is challenging my business model. But before it becomes scale up, I think there's a large amount of space for companies to be successful, or to be individuals to be successful.
Yeah. But essentially, like you said, it's about the problem you're solving. It can't be a wrapper saying that, okay, I've taken OpenAI, I've taken a Claude, build something around it, here, use it, right? It's about.
I think it's also not a bad idea to. Do you want to build another OpenAI or another large language model? I think it's become, now everybody realizes it's super expensive, right? I think, but using that as a technology, and how do you adopt to that particular use case or to that particular problem? Because all of us in the industry has significant problems, right? We have to be able to, when we do explain our problems, what problems do I have, right? And people do come up with solutions. I mean, if I take our example of security, right? In security, we said we have a fantastic security to manage my entire infrastructure, but do I have a security for my customer at a price point of cents? I cannot build a product which is at cents. I can build a project at millions, because I'm a scale, as I said, it's a billion euro. If it is a 100K project, 10K project, 20K project, it's difficult for us to really focus, right? And that is where I think startups significantly helps us.
Yeah. But what advice would you give to someone who wants to be in engineering, technology, and more importantly, like you said, solving problems? Because I think the mindset should be that even if I'm whatever field I'm in, what's the problem I'm trying to solve? Just like the problems that you are trying to solve. So what would one piece of advice be that you would give to people who want to be in that field?
Yeah, I think for me, when I'm looking at, of course, I talk to my son who is 26 and 21. When I speak with my friends' sons and daughters, what I normally tell them is, guys, define 2 areas. Are you working at a fundamental level, or are you working at a application level? Right? Do not try to do both, because you don't have bandwidth. I mean, it's easy if somebody can work both at fundamental engineering as well as application engineering. I would say, wow, this is the god. That's AI for me. But decide on that particular area. Do you want to be a fundamental deep tech area where you want to be? And that takes time. Fundamental engineering always takes time. So if you have patience to be a fundamental engineering company or an engineering person, you need to have patience. But on application level, you can be much faster, because your outcome or output, what you deliver, is much faster at application level. Fundamental level, it takes time. So that is where I say, okay, choose these two areas. And second thing is, never think that when you're a startup, one person can solve everything.
Yep.
You need to have ability to work with people who are not like you, right? People who have a completely different skill set, right? And finally, what I realize when I'm mentoring about 2 or 3 startups in India right now, go to market.
Yep.
Without go to market, it's ideas on the kitchen table cannot go into the refrigerator nor in the dishwasher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if the idea is going to be killed, let it be killed with the market, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think finally, is Mallik Rao, the CEO, going to look at business any differently, or is it still going to be the same
Absolutely
perspective that you bring as
absolutely. When I'm looking at my new job, I would possibly take a break about, at least. I mean, I took actually a break about in December. I knew this job is coming up. December, 15 days, I took a break. I said, I don't want to think anything, just void. And that is important for me. And that's how I learn, right? So the new job, what I'm taking, I'm going to be responsible for roughly about 4,800 people organization. So Mallik in the new job will look at more from a customer business than technology. As a technologist, normally your heart goes to technology. But when last 18 months when I'm managing the business as a CEO for the enterprise business, that taught me a lot. Because giving implicitly, you know what is needed, but by doing what is needed is a significantly different. Somebody taught me in earlier part of the career. He said, if you want to find the weight of a stone, you got to put your hands under the stone and lift it. You can't say, just guess and say, this is 2 kilos or 5 kilos. You got to put your hands around, make your hands dirty, and then say, okay, what it is. And that is what I learned, and that is what I would want to do in my new job, because I feel responsible of 4,800 people. That's it.
I think you're a little older than 37 now, but like I said, there's still a first time to be a CTO, CEO for everything. So
absolutely.
I think, I just want to wish you all the best. Thank you so much for your time, and it was a pleasure being here and talking to you today.
Pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.